What's happiness to Jack?
I think happiness to me is I have a probably a deep-rooted fear that I will never get there.
Right.
But I guess it's more of a piece of learning I'm a failure because I didn't make it succeed out of university. However, I could die tomorrow and I would be okay. You have not failed. It's just that's the journey you're meant to take. You never get the kind of brain space to stop. You're in the right place for where you are right now.
Do you think about death a lot? If you knew it was going to be in 15 years, how would your life look different now?
I'd probably, if I'm truly honest,
Today, my guest is Jack Sherman, a good friend. Although we've only known each other for not very long now, but by my estimation, it's probably one of my deeper relationships. I'd say it's a deeper friendship than at least 90% of my friendships, and I think. I find you interesting. I find your character interesting.
Thank you very much.
And which is why you're here today. So I can only hope that I can facilitate this conversation well enough to draw out who you are and what I can learn from you.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find that out. But thank you very much for having me.
That's all right. And now, as some people know, the reason I started the podcast in the first place was to hack the system. By that I mean create something or a good excuse, some leverage to getting to know my friends better and hopefully deeper. Mm-hmm. And as a byproduct, naturally have a chat with some interesting people, and hopefully I can learn from it. And the only thing I hope is that one other person finds value in it. And I'm happy with that. So with that said, Jack, why don't you give us some of your background? Why don't you tell me where Jack came from?
Well, I'm young, curious young lad. I've always had I think I definitely starting to learn now within the later years, and there's definitely an element of ADHD within me, which I didn't know from a young kid. And just, I wasn't ever very book smart. I've always been kind of like into my sports or talking to anyone. And within that, I went to your standard local kind of school. My parents realised that I wasn't succeeding. I get, a classroom of 30, got put to the back. Obviously, I was messing around as kids do when they're, a bit confused and realised that it's either getting boring or anything like that. A couple of years down the line, they see that, my grades just aren't doing anything. So they say, look, we're going to kind of take you out and we're going to look to investing kind of in me, I guess, and moving me to prep school. So from year 7 and 8, they put me in prep school. And then the school after that was Shiplake College, which I went to in Henley. And
was that a private school?
Yeah, that was also a private school. And went there right the way through to the end of sixth form, where I was very lucky and privileged enough to build up this kind of self-confidence as well as actually have a proper fundamental education. And I'm not saying that the education system in the UK is completely broken and everyone needs to go into private education. I'm not saying that at all, because there's people that can thrive in your standard kind of schooling system. But for me, it didn't work. So I thank my parents, every day for making that decision for me. Within that, I got, went to university, was still learning about myself, found out kind of more kind of curiosity, if you like, towards business, marketing as a whole, investing. There's lots of things there. I mean, I can't say I took too much of my course through to real life, but that's by the by in this case, and kind of took it forward, and then went into the working world and was just trying to work up the corporate ladder, as it were. So and then here I am, 7 years on after coming out of university. I'm proud of where I am today, in a good situation. Marketing manager for a global organisation for medical devices. So I'm happy with where I am, but I think there's a devil inside me that always wants a lot more, and almost kind of never being content, always wanting the next step and progressing to the next spot, which is a blessing and a curse as well, because not only do you have the situation of where you want to strive, and that comes with all the ambition, but then you balance the delicacy of happiness. And I still, we were saying, off camera earlier before, that when we were having this conversation, what would be the one thing I wanted to kind of achieve by the end or the end of my life? And it would be the true balance between happiness, and kind of constantly wanting to achieve, and constantly wanting to grow. So yeah, there's lots of bits about me. Here I am today. I'm neither a balance of both in the way. Very happy with what my parents did. I'm in a good job role now, so it just shows to everyone out there that you don't actually need to be the top of your class all the time and smashing it there. Everyone gets there through their own routes, and as long as you have that grit and that determination and the wanting to constantly kind of build, then you can get to successful places.
What's happiness to Jack?
Oh, crikey!
I know.
Going in deep. I think happiness to me is to have loving family and friends supported, around me, as well as the element of financial stability, and also having a purpose. I know some absolutely wonderful people who are incredibly wealthy, but do not necessarily have that purpose or that drive. It's all ends of the spectrum, really. It's not just an accumulation of wealth. It's there's lots of people that I see that just don't have that, who can just come in and do the 9 to 5 and then go home. But yeah, that's not kind of me. But in the terms of happiness, it is that kind of having family around you, financial stability, and having that drive, as well as that purpose to kind of go forward and do new things. And I think if I can have those in a right balance, then that's happiness. That's right. Success in my mind.
Now, going back to your childhood again, you mentioned that obviously you weren't doing very well at public school, and your parents picked you up and moved you to a private school. What was that like? How did you adjust to private school, and how did your view of your parents change in any way for doing that? I can imagine some kids might look at that scenario and go, they didn't believe in me enough to leave me there, and or just didn't care. What was your view?
I think there's no doubt in my mind that they, any parent would, in that situation, would care so deeply about their child and wanting to care for their future, because anyone can, say at the end of the day, oh yeah, honey, we could buy another house or go on loads of holidays each year and all these other bits. But to say, no, I'm actually going to invest in my child's future, that takes serious commitment, and I will always thank them. I think there's an element of myself that takes guilt away from it to a degree, and I'm working on that continuously. I think if anyone takes a lot of, finances off their parents and has an understanding of monetary value, then that guilt will inevitably be there. And I do that by elements of trying to pay them back in any way, shape or form. And I think the biggest thing is kind of making them proud, which, if I'm truly honest with myself right now, it would probably be the fact that is another element or a major element of what drives me every day is in the way to make myself proud, but ultimately my parents proud, to kind of prove that their investment was worthy in a way. And I shouldn't necessarily take any kind of guilt from that, because it's their decision. And they've told me this, kind of multiple times when it's, ever come up in conversation. But I still think you take your demons at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah.
Yeah, cool. And now you said there's some guilt associated to the event now, and the way you feel you could repay them back is to make them proud. At what stage do you think you'd need to be for you to make them proud, or for your perception of them to be proud of you, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I have a probably a deep-rooted fear that I will never get there.
Right.
But I guess it's more of a piece of learning to be happy within myself, and building upon that, and kind of saying, right, okay, there's these elements in here that I need to work on, to say that is a choice that they made, and I don't kind of need to make them proud. I need to make myself proud. And as long as I can do that and wake up every day and say, yeah, shit, Jack, you're doing a good job, then at the end of the day, that's where that lies. But I think that's work I've got to do myself necessarily, and not actually kind of work like anything to do necessarily with my parents. I think that was a catalyst towards the situation. I don't think that's the way I can actually go back and necessarily. I can't go back in time, right?
Sure.
So I've got to fix what's going forward and work on me, and kind of come to that point to say, right, Jack, you're doing well enough. This is a good state. It's kind of reflection, right? And saying, okay, this is a good state. This is where you're at now. You're doing really well. And that's the kind of progress on what I've got to keep looking for and reminding myself. But like anyone within any situation, you don't always look that introspectively, and to kind of say and look around you and take 5 minutes. We know how busy the working world is in these days. We're all rushing around, we're all looking at social media, it's firing off. You never get the kind of brain space to stop and go, whoa, this is my apartment, this is kind of my car, these are my friends, these are my family, we're all in good health, this is what we're doing. You're constantly just running that cycle on and on and on and on. So I think that's definitely quite tricky. But I think, to answer your question in the most succinct way, I don't. There is a deep-rooted fear that I will never get there.
Do you carry a lot of the burden for making relationships you're in work?
What do you mean? As in, like,
so when you're in a relationship or friendship, or relationship with your parents, do you think you put it upon yourself to make sure it's good?
Yeah, I think so. Most definitely.
Why I ask is because you strike me as the sort of person that does. And from our, albeit brief, interaction in the grand scheme of things, I look back on how we actually got to know each other, and the story you're telling me now with your parents, and I think, right, well, I have a few, but I don't have a lot of really deep friendships. I might be wrong, but you strike me as the sort of person that does have a few at least, and almost an instigator of those type of friendships. You know, so what I guess what I'm trying to find out is, what would you say you bring to a friendship or relationship that makes it more than just the surface level, usual thing that most people have?
I think it's definitely, I want to truly get to know someone. If I've always found, people psychology really, really interesting. And we can go down that rabbit hole, but it's probably for another time.
Yeah.
But all in all, I always want to be present within the situation. I'm definitely not perfect at it. And I definitely think we're all guilty in going on our phones and stuff like that. And, say you're out for dinner with friends and you just pop up and see what notifications you got, etc. But yeah, within what do I bring into a relationship or a situation or family? I'm just there. I'm trying to be my authentic self. I think that's all you can be in life. I think I'm going through iterations of myself, which are the most authentic at that time. I guess you look at videos back where 10 years back and you're like, what am I doing? Like you're a plonker, mate. But I think all in all, I, definitely just bring as much kind of being present and caring and compassionate, as well as that genuine interest. Like for yourself, people won't know, but we met at the cycling club, and it was one day you were a loud individual like myself, and I was like, that is a bloke I can get on with. It says it how it is, just up front, good, in for a good time, and just is genuinely interested about that other person. So since then, I guess that's all of it. To be honest, it's. Yeah.
So I recently actually heard this idea that you get to choose your regrets. So essentially what the idea is that, often we think about the opportunities we get in life, and we get to choose those, but we don't think about the regrets. We often think about regrets as these things that you get in life when you've made the wrong decisions. Mm-hmm. But the idea was that regrets are part of life, and to some degree we make those choices. So, for example, if you had a choice of if you're this talented, becoming a footballer or a musician, right? You have to pick in that situation the regret that you could live with, mm-hmm. right? What regrets would you say you've had to choose, whether knowingly or unknowingly, in order to be the person you are today?
I think, as going back to my point kind of around business and marketing, when I came out of university, or while I was finishing university, I set up my own marketing consultancy for SMEs and startups. If I'm being completely authentic and honest, it pretty much I just couldn't get it kind of necessarily off the ground. I had a handful of clients, but nothing that was going to give me something that I was going to be able to sufficiently live on post university. So I had that situation, and then I decided, okay, right, this necessarily wasn't going to work, and I needed to come to terms with that, and then kind of go up in the corporate stakes, because I was like, look, I can gain so much more knowledge here. The monetary value I would have in the way of budgets, as well as what I'd be able to take home, could give me so much more that I could then build myself up to be better and better, and then progress onto something, and then start something myself, as a sole trader, or starting up my own business, my own limited company of some sort. I think I've always thought of myself as I'm a failure because I didn't make it succeed out of university. However, I'm realizing now that it wasn't the right time then. And I think so many people go, I've got this idea, or I'm starting something, and it literally, I don't know even whether you can call it come off the ground, but it starts to progress in the right direction, and then it falls flat on its face. And I think people will always have regrets to kind of be like, I failed. But I know now from kind of hindsight and reflection that it wasn't the right time. I needed to go away and acquire more knowledge so I could then come back in a more, in a situation where I could actually achieve and do this. I definitely want that throughout my future. But at the current situation, I'm still in the phase of learning. I'm doing a lot of life learning, as we all are all the time, right? But I think I'm going through definitely a strong stage at the moment. But I guess to circle back round to your question, what would I be, regrets in the way of what would that look like, and how would I, come to terms with that regret, is that I guess I already have kind of come to terms with that, and to kind of say, yeah, okay, I kind of beat myself up that didn't take off, and I didn't manage to start that off, and I had to go away and do work on myself. But I know that was a true lesson that I learned, and I'm going to come back stronger. And that goes for anyone who's listening. Even though you can be so hard on yourself to not kind of, if something failed, or you had an idea and you thought it was really going to take off, and someone said no, they shout in your dream, and you kind of believe them. Whatever that is the case, if you need to go away and learn, do that right thing, and then come back stronger later down the line. You have not failed. It's just that's the journey you're meant to take. Don't see it as necessarily a regret, even though I could argue it probably the other way, that it could have been a regret, but it was for the right reasons, and I can see that now.
Right. I wouldn't even necessarily say that's a regret, because I think they say generally you regret the things you don't do. And you gave it a shot. It didn't pan out. You learned from it. If anything, it was more a lesson than a regret. I think the other question I was going to ask was what you would tell younger Jack before he started the business, but I feel like you already answered that. So what would you tell younger Jack if he was, as he was going through the tough times of realizing that the business was probably not going to work?
I'd say don't be hard on yourself. Realize that you are going to circle back later along the lines. You just need to go away and do that hard graft. And I know you're saying that, it was more of a lesson, but I think there is always going to be in my mind that, what happens if you just pushed and got the next client, or you remarketed yourself in a different way, or, you went down you went niche and went down a specific route, and that was the thing that kind of hit you off. So I think there's, as much as I completely agree with you, it's life lessons in the play, I will always still have an inkle of me to be like, could I have done that 1% more that would have changed that outcome? And that will, that's a little bit of frustration, but take me forward. But yeah, I think in the way of what would I kind of tell my younger self, it's just to be nicer to yourself. I think we're all bloody hard on ourselves within the modern world we live in. I trust me, I know I do it in my own head all the bloody time. And it's just like, look, let's just rein that in, I always find that a really, really good thing to do, and I can't remember who actually said it. I think I listened to it off another podcast, but it was basically just saying that, say to yourself what you'd say to a really good mate. Like, say, let's use a simple gym example, right? If you didn't go to the gym for one day and you were on this, say you're on this training regime, or you want to get, abs for summer. If your mate didn't do it for one day, you'd be like, don't worry, mate. It's absolutely fine. There's so much more consistency. It's so much more of a bigger picture. But I know within my head that I'm going to go, you're not going to get that body, mate. you're not going to get that body unless you go today. You're feeling shit, but you still need to go. But it's actually not like that. And you need to kind of rein that back in and kind of say, well, okay, what would I say to a mate? Because it would be completely different to usually what we'd say to ourselves.
I guess we are just a lot harsher on ourselves than other people, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What would you say pushes you? What would you say is your why?
What's my why? I think definitely, and I know this may sound very weird, but financial independence, and in this state being financially free. I'd like to get to that stage. I don't think that's like a golden bucket at the end of the rainbow. But I do think that financial stability, and basically what I mean by that is that all of your investments are basically paying all your outgoings and sufficient more for you to live, as well as kind of a surplus of income that could, support friends and family. Because I guess, kind of going back to my childhood a bit, my parents did suffer with a bit of, money issues. And like they, sent me to private school. That wasn't easy. It's not cheap, if anyone knows the costs for private school, which is again coming back to the reason for the guilt, I guess. But I guess that intrinsically drives me to be financially stable, to support myself as well as support loved ones and friends that I don't also want to see in that same position, to kind of be struggling with money. Because I think you'll find that, and I truly believe that so many of the conversations and arguments couples, families, friends have and decisions they make is purely based down on financial stability. And I think that makes things really, really difficult for people.
Would you say that financial stability and or financial freedom in the future was what led you to attempt to start a business?
I think so. Yeah, definitely. I remember reading this book when I was around about 16. It was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert T. Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
As soon as I read it, and trust me, going back to the start, I did not read books. I'm not a bookworm. I'm a get out, play in the woods, play sport kind of guy. But I've always had a different thing with self-development books. I've always found it completely different. I think actually, GCSEs, I think I read Mice of Men, but that was pretty much it. But since finding the kind of self-development journey, I've just been obsessed, and it's a constant, as I say, iterations of yourself that you're constantly building on. But anyway, read Robert T. Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, absolutely amazing book, highly recommend. Please go and read if you ever want to just be financially independent or see it from a different perspective. And I guess ever since then I've kind of thought that you can't be truly, I mean you can, but it's such a small percentage of people that can be kind of financially free from a perspective of not necessarily owning your own business, working for another company or putting money in someone else's pocket, right? And you can work yourself up the corporate ladder and get to the top. You can be director, CMO, CEO, whatever. But then you're sacrificing a lot of time and a lot of life. These jobs come with big cost. And that's not to say a business owner doesn't. I'm not saying that at all, because you could argue that in some cases a business owner would potentially take on more stress and more time because it's all on their shoulders, and their families and themselves rely on that financial income. But within the situation of, that reason of drive, I think it's so important that you have those kind of key elements, and that being a business owner can actually give you that long-term wealth in a lot more accessible way for anyone else. So yeah, short answer to your question, absolutely. I found that right from the start. And I thought that was the only way I was going to be truly, financially stable. And I'm sure I'll get there. I know I'll get there one day. It's just on the journey that I'm going on of when that's going to be.
Right. So like you, I only started reading as well when I found myself in a business. Had a business for a year and a half, very short time to run a business. And I think likewise, in the only 2 books I'd read before then was Of Mice and Men and Romeo and Juliet.
I see.
Romeo and Juliet.
How art thou?
Yeah, right. I basically crammed it to some degree for an English exam, because if I didn't pass that exam, I would have ended up with, well, I think an F in English. So anyway, so that went all right. But anyway, so I started reading, and the first book I read was Rich Dad Poor Dad as well. And I realized quickly that when you didn't have to, when you were genuinely interested in something, you just read, whether you, which is, to some degree is an argument that maybe our schooling system does need to adapt, maybe not completely change, but adapt. And there's a principle that I heard from or read from one of the books, I think it's 40-Hour Work Week, was, so you mentioned happiness earlier, right? And in this book, I believe it's this book anyway, but in this book, there's a story of I'm going to butcher this story, but the idea is the same. A CEO that goes on holiday to Mexico, sees a fisherman. Now the fisherman goes on the lake or the river, whatever, wherever you fish, and he catches, I think, something like 5 fish. Every day, catches 5 fish, goes home. Every day, catches 5 fish, goes home. The rich guy, I guess, sees him, rich businessman, sees him every day. And then one day he's like, hey, how good are you at fishing? I notice you only catch 5 fish and then you go home. He's like, yeah, I only, obviously he didn't speak like that, but imagine he was speaking in his Mexican accent, or even Mexican or Spanish, I think is what they speak. Anyway, he says, I catch enough fish for my family and my amigos. And the businessman is like, okay, so if you fished more, could you catch more fish? How much more fish can you catch? And so he tells him a number, and he's like, whoa, that's pretty impressive. You're quite good at this. He's like, yeah, I've been doing it for quite a while now. And so the businessman says, well, I've got a brilliant idea. Here's what we do. You catch, you work 8 hours a day, right? You catch X amount of fish. You still have your 5 for your family and your amigos. So that's, they're served. But then you sell the rest. And then after some time, you buy a net, right? And you catch even more fish. And he's like, then what? And he said, well, at that point, you can scale up. You get some employees, you get them doing the same thing. And he's like, then what? And he says, well, you can have a big business then, and you can become quite rich. And he says, well, then what? So, well, you can run that for a while and then eventually retire. And he's like, well, what would I be doing when I retire? He says, well, you can then relax, hang out with your amigos, and only fish when you want to. And he says, well, senor, why would I go through all that process just to come back and do the thing that I'm currently doing right now? Now, that really hit me, because it did make me reevaluate how I look at life. Because sometimes we find ourselves, when it comes to money specifically anyway, we find ourselves chasing the money. So what's coming in increases, what's going out also increases. And this, whatever the goal is there, just constantly eludes us. How would you say you're doing on the pursuit of happiness, bearing that in mind?
I mean, first of all, I know that exact story.
Right.
You didn't butcher it. I think it was
Okay.
nicely done. I knew
good.
exactly
very
what you were
kind of you.
talking about, so there you go. I think I'm getting there. I'm definitely not there. But I'm definitely not scratching for endless paychecks. I'm not living from month to month. I've got flexibility to a degree, and buffers and some partial investments. I'm definitely not necessarily, secure in my mindset at all, but I'm in a healthy buffer situation. And I guess it's about, again, finding that purpose. And once you find that purpose, it's like him catching his fine fish. You've got your purpose. You're doing it for your amigos. You're doing it for your family, and that's it. I guess it's in a weird way. I've admired people who can, to a degree, I've admired people that can do the 9 to 5 and just leave and just be done, and kind of then, go off to the pub or do anything like this, go to the pub Thursday, Friday, do these things week in, week out and have the same kind of life. And that's not placing any offense into that. I love a good pub. But I've always got to have that next thing, as in like constantly be striving for more just to mentally keep myself stimulated. It's not necessarily in the way that I'm not, and I guess you could argue that I'm not content, but, and I probably get too bored easy. It's probably links all the way back to the ADHD, to be honest with you. But I will find that. But I guess it's going through the years of understanding what you do enjoy and what you don't enjoy. And you've got to find those through, like going through those iterations to actually understand where your true purpose lies. Because they tell you at, school, university, what do you want to study? What do you want to be? And it's like, I got no bloody idea. Really? Like, I was quite lucky. I always loved kind of business. And, my parents will tell you that, my favourite game was to basically play shops from a young age. And my parents literally bought me one of those little plastic things, and I'd charge my little sister and my little brother extortionate amounts for different fruits and veg, pretty much like it is day to day now.
Yeah.
But that, so I've always had a lucky element of that. I knew that business and marketing were kind of like a real interest to me. And I do believe within going in the future, marketing will dominate everything, because you can have a fantastic product and it can revolutionize something, but with shit marketing, it's not going to get anywhere. But you can have a crap product with really good marketing and it creates huge demand and everyone wants it. Fidget spinners, for example.
Right.
Piece of shit, really, aren't they? Come on. Like, what, you've had one in your hand for 30 seconds, you're like, okay, right, it does that. Brilliant. But there was so much hype. Right. It was everywhere. And they were the next thing and everyone wanted it. And the demand was there, because of the marketing. And then, you had drop shipping companies spending millions of pounds on these little pieces of plastic that with a ball inside that basically just spun. Yeah.
You mentioned the journey of purpose earlier. Where would you say you are on that journey? So would you say you know what your purpose is? Would you say you're still finding out?
I definitely have a good idea of what I like and what I don't like by now. I'm about to be 26.
Wow, you're so old.
Next week, I'm really aged. No, I'm not. I'm lucky that I can kind of see this all in this perspective. But I think definitely there's so much around it that I'd probably say I'd say I'm 40% the way there. I've got so much to go. But I know I love business. I love those elements of, looking at strategy and working at that, because I enjoy that in my day-to-day job now. I want more, the ability to make more of my own decisions rather than having to go through kind of a corporate structure or, having to keep in line with something like that. It'd be quite nice to call the shots, in a bigger way and make a bigger difference. But yeah, I'm probably 30-40% there. I think, and this is where we could do a full circle of grass is always greener on the other side, right?
Yeah.
And you could constantly play that battle. Like everyone, for an example on that, people see influencers as being the D's, B's, and it's like, I live with someone who kind of does that to a degree, kind of micro influencing, and it's not everything. You see them all in these glamorous spots and these doing these and perfect angles and all these other little bits, and it's going to different kind of photo shoots, but it's constant. It's a drain on your life that you are constantly having to showcase you as a perfect human, and that's not the case. We're not perfect human. Everyone has shit days. But do you see the shit days? No. But I guarantee you'll see the bit when someone's on a boat somewhere in the south of France, having the best time, opening a bottle of rosé. So I think going back to your point is that, yeah, I'm 30 to 40% of the way there. I know I like business. I know I like marketing. I could see myself in the future with that. I'd like to accumulate wealth and where I could invest in other companies and get involved. And I've always found that really interesting, and coming at it from a strategic perspective in working on those. So I guess I kind of do. And I do that within my day-to-day. So doing that within multiple organizations would be fantastic. And I think that would get me even further down the line. But I'd say I'm pretty privileged in this situation to kind of even know in that element what I enjoy. So yeah.
With purpose then, and with, I guess, what you want out of life, how do you balance because to some degree you have to live in the future, don't you?
Yeah.
To know what you want and to be driven by it. How do you balance the living in the future and living now?
I think it comes back to that perspective in kind of you saying, stopping for 5 minutes and kind of looking around you to be like, oh, okay, this is what I have. This is who I am. There's one thing that people can't truly buy in this world, and that's health, right? And if you look around you and you've got your friends and your family and everyone's in partially good nick, and they're still around, having fun, being able to laugh, then that is so important. And I think we forget that, but you've got to stop and kind of look around. But then that shouldn't mean that, in my eyes, okay, right, I've got here, I'm done now. Right. This is what I'm going to work in this organization for 45, 50 years, and I'm going to retire, and then I'm just going to be done. Because that's not, I want to get to a situation where I never have to retire. I want to constantly have different things that I can do that are for fun. I want to turn my job into fun. And I get what people would say, and I do agree to an extent of where it's great to have a kind of hobby that is work, and that will loosen off to a degree. But it's like, as long as a lot of the bits that you do enjoy, then you shouldn't need to retire. It shouldn't be 65 or 67, the retirement age now, to kind of say, right, that's my golden ticket, I'm done, put my hands up. Because you look at life, you start, I started work at around about 14, 16 or something. Me and a friend were washing cars around the, around the not the block, but around the housing estate, and you start off there, and then realistically, as I say, 67, that's a huge amount of your life that you are working. That's like 80%, and you're just gonna just be done. And you're just going to sit there and just be like, fine. And fair play, as I said earlier, if you've got that contentment that you've got in there, then that's brilliant. And I'm super happy for you. But I haven't got that. I constantly want to drive for that a little bit more. And yeah, I guess it's a delicate balance, right? Between balancing that out between living in the now and living in the future, what you could be. And you've got to be content with the now, but that shouldn't mean you shouldn't strive for what you could be.
So I heard this, concept that the most successful people in the world generally, or the most driven people, often what they're running away from is stronger than what they're running towards. We've discussed a lot about what you're running towards. You do strike me as someone that's driven. If there is anything, what would you say is the thing chasing you that you're running away from?
I think it comes back to the point of not being good enough, and not making my parents proud. I think if I really am truly honest about it, I guess it's not living up to my potential. I know, and I say this to my team and everything like that everyone can do great things. I know that sounds like a cliche, like I've read it off the back of a book or something, but it truly is possible. Your own mind is the only parameter that stops you from doing things. So within that situation, you can do absolutely anything that you put your mind to. And I fully believe that. I think there's a lot of elements at play though when you're looking at that perspective. And I get that people might come from a more privileged situation, and there's loads of other things at play, but I think all in all, it's really, really important to truly kind of believe that. And I guess I fear that I will never live up to that necessary expectation, or I will always be kind of running away from a lack of potential, or a lack of achieving in what you could have done. I think it causes problems in other states of life, like relationships and stuff like that. I will agree to that, and I'm probably always looking for kind of like the next thing to a degree, and what I can achieve. So I guess that is truly what I'm running away from, is that me not living up to who I mentally want to be.
One thing that I think is interesting about this conversation, actually, and the very existence of this conversation, is, so you're a young guy, 25, right? That's correct, yeah. Don't want to age you.
I feel old, Vic.
You're a young guy, and we're able to have this conversation at this level. Now, most people our age, I don't want to say most, but there's certainly some. I know that for a fact. There's some people, and it seems like most people nowadays can't have conversations like these. One, because some people get too easily offended. Two, because sometimes I guess there is a notion, I think it's a Jungian notion, I'm not sure, it might be otherwise, but that when you stare into the abyss stares back at you. And I think a lot of people are scared to think. Because I guess when you think, if you ask yourself the question, who am I, or how am I doing, you might get the true answer. And I think a lot of people are scared of that. And I think, well, I guess my question is, why are you so different to the norm in that regard? Why are you able? Why do you think you're able to? Well, think. As silly as that sounds, almost. So,
I guess it's. I think I know where you're going with it, and in the way of, I believe it's from a privileged situation in the way that, I've got everything to thank from my parents, in the way that my mum could speak to anyone on the train. She is this massive flappy kind of person who's just full of life and wants to speak and care for everyone. My dad's quite necessarily introverted, but an incredibly, incredibly smart man, and got the heart of gold. So within that delicate balance, I've got that, and within that gives me a privileged situation from a balance of my upbringing, of them teaching me what's right and wrong and using them as my role models, that I can speak to you the way I'm speaking to you today. Obviously, that's it's nature nurture, I guess, as well. Again, do I have private school to thank for some of that? Yeah, I guess I do to a degree, because you're expected to grow up from a young age. As I say, I went to boarding school at 13. I had to grow up, and I was only weekly boarding, but you have to grow up. You have to grow into a man quite fast. And I think, to be honest, my mother's even said this multiple times, that she regrets sending me. She wouldn't, if she had the choice again, she would not do it.
why is that?
Just because she regrets that I grew up so fast. But I think it's the best thing ever, because I'm allowed to have these conversations with you today, and like with other people, and it can be intellectually stimulating, and that comes back to your point of just like, why can I do this? Because I'm in a privileged situation where both my parents are grounded, lovely and honest people, and I've also surrounded me in a place where I'm part of an educated system that helps me, that drives me to be a better me. And then I got on that hook, and then that's why we got in the self-development kind of journey on being better and better and better. And I guess that's the why I am who I am today.
Now I asked the question earlier. What would you say to your previous self, I guess, when you were at a state where you were running the business? Now, you're 25. Let's say in 15 years' time, you'd be 40. Let's go further. Let's go 50, right?
Scary thoughts.
I
Scary
know.
thoughts.
That's a whole another lifetime for you, basically.
Yeah.
What do you think your 50-year-old self... the question will be twofold. What do you think your 50-year-old self would be saying to you right now? And what would you like your 50-year-old self to be saying to you right now?
I think I'd like my 50-year-old self to say to me, you're in the right place for where you are right now. I think where I see my 50-year-old self is doing near enough day in, day out something that I enjoy, that I have healthy family and friends around me that I can support and them support me, not only obviously emotionally, but also within the way of kind of, financially, business wise. I want to see other friends and family succeed as well, and do whatever they enjoy and they aspire to be. But yeah, I hope that I'm just, I guess, a good example of this is my dad, where I said to him one day, he was in a very privileged situation again. He bought a brand new Range Rover, and I said to him, Dad, look at it. Like, I was literally on the drive and we were washing it, And I was like, oh, I'd wash this every day. You know, if I had this car, I'd wash it every day. I did, as an FYI, actually help him wash it basically every weekend. Anyway, I said to him, God, look at what you've done, Dad. Like, look at this as an achievement. And I know, cars and houses and all that stuff is very materialistic. I'm not kind of saying that there's a bigger meaning towards this. I said to him, look, you know, look what you've done. Are you so proud? And he was like, Jack, you know, I don't necessarily see it. I don't necessarily see it. And that actually made me really sad at the time. And I guess I've kind of got caught to a degree in the same loop, but I still try and bring myself out. And that's that perspective piece to kind of say, okay, this is what you're doing. And this is where you're sat. You should be happy where you are right now. Like, really proud of yourself. But, and I suppose you could say I'm already kind of a little bit within that situation of I don't look around enough, but I try and do it as much as I can. But I suppose it's allowing yourself time to kind of sit back and just pause. But yeah, I guess that 50-year-old self just kind of like saying, just look, you know, that 50-year-old Jack being happy with and content with everything that he has basically got, enjoying his day-to-day, family and friends succeeding, as well as happy and healthy. And I'm, you know, financially free or financially stable. And that's all I can ask for. I can die a happy man. Mm-hmm. I think if I truly asked myself, could I die today a happy man? I think I could say yes. I think I'm a rare person that could truly say yes. Touch wood, hopefully that doesn't happen. But, and there's so much more I want to achieve. But I always love carpe diem. Like, as a quote, wise just seize the day.
Right.
And there's so much truth to it. I think I lived it too much when I was, you know, a little bit younger, of just like every day you just want to jam pack the shit out of things. And I think that also assisted my ADHD in the way that I was just going like, right, I need to do this, need to do that, need to do this. But there's a lot of it as well to just kind of being that content and happy self. So yeah.
Do you think about death a lot?
Do I think about death a lot? I think I have a weird perspective, as I just mentioned, that I could die tomorrow, and I would be okay with that.
Is that weird though?
I don't know. I think it is quite weird
uncommon.
From the people that I've spoken to, you know, and having a previous partner that we spoke about death now and then, and it would just petrify the shit out of her. She would never want to talk about it, any of family or friends. But inevitably, we're all going to die at some point. Mm. I think there's an element of peace.
I mean, speak for yourself. But
Are you superhuman? Is this where you admit this on this? I mean, fair play. Tell me the secrets. But I know, I'm going to kill over someday, whatever that may be because of. But as is everyone, we know we're all going to leave this planet. But I think there's a huge weight that comes off your shoulders by kind of saying, well, yeah, it could be tomorrow, it could be 3 years away, it could be 50, 100 years away, you know? Mm. So,
but if you knew it was going to be in 15 years, how would your life look different now?
I'd probably, if I'm truly honest, I'd probably work 3 days a week. I think out of speaking with people that are on retirement or phased retirement or, you know, quite successful, 3 days a week seems to be the perfect thing. And I think in Finland it's legal, a legal requirement for them to only work 4-day working week. And I truly think there is something to that with the working world that we're in today. We spend 5 out of the 7 days a week working.
What would you do with the spare time?
I mean, I'd paint. Comes featured, sponsored ad. A Jay Chaumont.
That's it.
I'd do a little bit more painting. there's so many more things I'd like to do. I'd like to skydive, even though that scares the shit out of me.
We should organise that sometime.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
That's a claim there.
Let's do it.
Stay featured. But yeah, there's so many more things that I'd like to do, and I think again it just comes back to quality time with family and friends. We only get those 2 days a week to actually do that, and a lot of people, I think if we're truly honest, 95% of the population is probably living for the weekend, especially within Western civilization anyway, and what we do. So it's like, I think if we separated that time frame a little bit and we allow more time to do those things, even if it's not like doing loads of things, it's like going and having a walk, or with a friend, or it's just you can sit on a bench somewhere, or anything. It's just having more time and more flexibility within that place.
I know this is putting you a bit on the spot, but
Go on.
I have to ask. What's stopping you from doing that now?
I guess it's it's hard to find a job of what I've got at the moment, and be in the financial situation that I'm trying to build, to then invest, to then be financially secure and financially free, that it would reduce the ability to do that. And I guess, anyone who's probably listening to this right now, and yourself, would be like, why are you being an idiot? Go and do that 3 days a week. Sod the money. That's what you said. The happiness is the key thing. And I do agree, but I guess it's just about finding the right role within that. But then I want to kind of go on to the point of owning your own business. But can you do that 3 days a week? Can you do a part-time, fun business and be financially free?
Right.
And if there's anyone who has done it, then please at me.
So I guess what you're saying basically is that you want to balance the living like you're going to die because you're going to, and the ambitions and goals which to some degree keep you going.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm far from getting to that happiness stage. I'm still so far away from kind of getting to that point where it's the delicate balance between spending that time relaxing as well as fueling that ambition to be better and do better things. But yeah, I think everyone is. I think everyone is constantly trying to find that delicate balance, because it's not easy.
Going back to death, what's your expectation of death? And what I mean by that is there an expectation? Some people believe there's life after death. Some people believe that's it. Some people believe we're reincarnated. What's Jack's perspective on that?
Gosh, this you've led me down a path. This is a dangerous topic discussing, but I'm not hugely religious in any way, shape, or form. I like the idea of reincarnation into something, but I believe there's a higher power of some sort, and I believe that. I'm a true believer that everything happens for a reason. So I wouldn't dedicate myself to any religion at all, but I would like to believe that there is a purpose for me being here on this earth, and it's whatever decision I make, something is already the path is kind of almost laid out, and that's happened for a reason. I'm in that place at that time, and that's how my cards lay out.
What about you that I don't know that you think is worth knowing?
God, that is an on-the-spot question.
Take your time.
I think I may come across very logical and, you know, almost quite stern. But I'm bloody gooey inside, mate. All honesty. And yeah, I'm a big softie, and I think, you know, friends and family around me know that I am like that. But I think everything it's masculine culture, isn't it? Of to kind of be the big macho man, and you know, going on to relationships and you know, dating. It's always, you know, I don't know, I guess it's not completely true, but to a degree, the good guy never really wins, and that's a little bit sad because you've got to kind of, I don't know, the dating game, as it were, but yeah, so I'm probably not cut out for it, but I am a really big softie, and not a lot of people know that truly about me, because I don't really show it that much, because I guess sometimes a masculine culture and what you kind of got to be like, as well as also you open yourself up to get hurt, but I guess you learn from the hurt, right? And lessons are hard, but that's life.
Right. Yeah, I guess because the you know, when you talk about the risk of getting hurt, my question there would be, what's the alternative? Because the alternative is wrapping yourself up in cotton wool and hoping nothing bad ever happens to you. And I like this perspective because it did change my perspective, which is that, you know, if you trust everybody off the get, that's naive. You know, the world isn't a place where you can just trust everybody without consideration. At the same time, if you've been wounded and as a result of that, you trust nobody, to some degree, that's wise. But if in spite of the wounds, you trust people, that's 100% courage. Like, you can't fake that. You know? And I understand, you know, you say you might not be cut out for the dating game. Yeah, I think that's the biggest, you know, pole ball you said all night. You know, no, honestly, mate, you're a great guy, and
thank you.
Yeah, it's been a good conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, yeah, mate, it's good. It's good I met you that day. Appreciate it, mate. Appreciate your friendship, mate.
Yeah, you too, buddy.
And yeah, thanks for coming on.
Pleasure. Cheers.